Drop Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Football Drop. As you can tell, it's a special. Will has changed. He's changed his face. He's changed his name. He's changed his complete identity this week. I'm delighted to have Callum join us. Callum is the founder of Portobello FC, his own football club. Living everyone's dream. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me tonight.
No, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Obviously, I know we've had a few conversations trying to get you on the show, and football training kind of gets in the way a little bit at times, and a busy life for yourself, obviously. Tell us a little bit about Portobello FC. Give us a little intro, if you can, about the club.
So, Portobello Football Club represents Portobello Road in Notting Hill here in West London. My connection to the area is basically I've lived here my entire life, bar when I was at university. So when I was starting a football club, it was kind of the obvious choice in terms of identity to go and focus on. It's also quite popular with tourists. It was where the film Notting Hill was set. You also have things like the Notting Hill Carnival, the punk rock band, The Clash were from the area as well. So, in terms of like an identity and brand, it was quite an obvious choice to build from. And yeah, that's where it's kind of like really initiated the idea from.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love the sort of tourist side of things as well. So everyone will know about it. What got you into football initially? Let's kind of start from the origin of Callum and football, if we can. So what was the interest? Was it just like any other sort of regular guy, so to speak, of your dad or brother or some sort of family member was like, let's follow football?
Not really a specific family member, just a love of football as a kid. So growing up, and I obviously still support Arsenal. But that
Excellent.
kind of like
Good choice.
That early 2000s era of like Arsenal and the Man United rivalry, and kind of like Jose Mourinho's, Chelsea. For me, that's a very good time to watch football. I know that's quite, nostalgia heavy. But then obviously since then, growing up and following the game, and obviously Arsenal's struggles over the last 10, 15 years in particular haven't been great. But for me, on kind of like a professional level, I guess, even university, I kind of wanted to work within football. From kind of like an operations / governance / admin kind of perspective. But the reality is within football, it's a very small industry, the professional game, not a lot of opportunities, and doesn't pay particularly well. So I was kind of looking at it, why don't I just start my own football club and build from there?
Fantastic. I mean, I love the fact that you've just gone straight into that. I can't get into it. It's not worth enough money. So just do it myself. I love that.
That's a big part of it.
No, do you know what? I mean, hats off to you. I think everyone dreams of it, but you don't necessarily just go and start it. So how would someone go about starting a football club exactly? Like, what was your process behind that?
So I worked in grassroots football for about 2 years, working for county football associations. So I would say I have fairly strong admin knowledge of what it was involved in terms of running the club. I hadn't really, played football on that kind of like level before or coached. It was just a background in the admin aspect of the club that I thought, I'm quite capable of doing this. And then just a general interest in identity and branding in general, but then applying it to sport, looking further afield, taking inspiration quite heavily from, the football in America, soccer in America, especially lower league soccer in America, which I think is very undervalued when it comes to people's understanding of the game. There's quite a lot of exciting stuff happening in the United States. So in terms of, starting a football club, I'd say you start with that kind of like point. It's like, what's the purpose? What's your identity? Who are you doing this for? What makes you different? I think if you can't answer those questions, you don't really have too much of an interesting project.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the starting point, I would say. Is like, who are you? What do you do? What do you represent? What makes you different? And what's the kind of like long-term objectives? I think that's really where you have to start.
Okay, so you're at that stage. You've got the name. You've got the brand. Did you have an idea on the branding side of things already? Was that something already kind of in the back of your mind of, right, we're going to go sort of roughly with this? Like, what's the plans? How are you different?
So in terms of the brand, for anyone who hasn't seen our logo, it is kind of like an abstract peacock. And again, the reason why I went for the peacock is it's quite a different kind of symbol to have. It's not a lion or any other kind of like conventional animal of choice. Again, the reason why I went for the peacock is quite a colourful, quite a bold, quite creative bird. And that's kind of really reflective of the Portobello area. And then, in terms of colours, going for blue, pink and yellow, having that against a black drop of kind of like black and white, which kind of ties all the three of those colours together. Again, that's, the area, Portobello, Notting Hill is quite a colourful area, so it kind of all connects to one. And as well, you have like Notting Hill Carnival, and a lot of the kind of costumes are quite bird inspired. So again, that's where I talk about like strong identity and strong brand, and how the visuals connect with, what you see yourself as being.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I've got your shirts up on my screen as well. And I must admit, they look absolutely beautiful. I can kind of see the sort of peacock kind of resemblance as well, with sort of patterns around it. It's all kind of like feathered out, almost like a peacock's tail as well. So you guys, I'll put a link so you can obviously have a look at the merch and hopefully support Callum and the team and buy what you can. So just trying to talk through the journey and see, you've got your branding, you've kind of got an idea behind it. How do you go about saying, I want to start a football club? How do you go about registering it, getting a ground, getting players? Talk us through that whole process if you can, because that sounds like an overwhelming task.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you've got a team as well around you.
The initial idea was 2019, with the idea of launching within 2020. So obviously 2020 was COVID. And I always look back and think that was probably, in a very strange way, the best thing to happen to this project, because it gave me that year where I could really focus on it and really do a lot more deeper, extensive research instead of rushing into it. I think if we had launched in 2020, we probably would have failed straight away. And again, that first year, that was a lot of risk, because this isn't a conventional business where you can just decide to do something. You're exposed to so many external kind of like influences, players, not committing and walking away, coaches potentially walking away, it just falling apart, people not enjoying themselves. So that's the kind of risk that we really faced in that first year. But fortunately, I think we had a good group of people at that kind of like starting point. Nobody knew each other. When I brought our manager on board, Daniel Merricks, I never knew him before. It was really just a conversation we had over Teams or Zoom, and I felt that he was the right person. And then none of the players, we didn't know any of the players. It was just an open advert on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, to try and get as many people involved as possible.
Wow.
And again,
Okay.
a lot of people came and a lot of people walked away straight away, because it was a new club. There was no record of it. But thankfully, we had a solid, in that first season, I would say 12, 13, 14 people that really kept it going in that first season when results weren't great. But I think we finished the first season, if I remember correctly, I'm not too sure, maybe 8th out of 12 teams. So we, even in our first season, we weren't the worst performing team. We actually did quite decent. Yeah. Despite a kind of a really difficult start. Yeah, that's really just, trial and error, finding the right people, having a bit of luck on that. Because again, if I didn't have a good manager in place at the very beginning, it probably would have fallen apart straight away. Finding a ground was just a case of Googling it. As where we play is not particularly fancy. It's just a field.
Oh, okay.
It's nothing fancy at the moment.
Okay. The fact, I think you've definitely downplayed the fact that you finished 8th out of 12th in your first season as a club, with literally just a bunch of people who have responded to an advert on Facebook. I think that's genuinely an incredible achievement just on its own, just doing that.
Yeah. I'm not. I think it was 8 out of 12. I can't remember. It seems like a lifetime ago now.
I mean, even if it was like 8th or 9th, not finishing bottom, I think you've got to give yourself like a massive pat on the back for that. I think that's incredible. But the thing that's kind of screaming out at the moment is the finance side of things. Now, I'm pretty sure she can't go into like loads of detail about the the nitty gritty, but is this a self-finance thing, or is this do you go to the bank for things like that, and business partners like investors? How does that come about exactly? Because I'm fairly certain this sort of stuff isn't cheap.
No. So I'm kind of reflecting on the last 3 years a bit at the moment, and I have definitely probably put too much money into this.
Okay.
But that's when you believe in what you're doing and you believe in the project, you do have to accept that element of risk. And at the end of the day, not every idea works. And mistakes do cost money. In terms of the players pay a contribution to the season. But again, in that first season where you perhaps don't have as many players as you want, you're not getting as much money from the players as you need to cover the core costs of running a club. We've been quite fortunate on sponsors. In the second season, we had a guy from America just kindly sponsor the club for about £3,000.
Fantastic.
But that essentially covered the losses from season 1. We've also done fairly well on the football shirt side, where we've been able to get a bit of money selling primarily wholesale our football jerseys. And again, that's kind of like a central part to what kind of like separates Portobello Football Club from your typical grassroots amateur football club, is that I'm trying to run it as a fashion business, I guess, where I focus on designing, manufacturing, and selling really cool football shirts. So that's kind of the bigger vision as to what I've been working on, and which is why I've kind of been able to commit myself to this project in a way perhaps other people haven't, because I understand there's kind of like an end goal there that's beyond just what happens on a Saturday. So again, like to date, we've probably made and sold 5,000 football shirts, but that's primarily been sold wholesale. It's not a massive amount of money. I always put that out to people, but it's good. It was good money to keep us going and keep me motivated.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be invested into this project myself. And this season, the football shirt sponsored by Classic Football Shirts. So just part of that deal, they purchased a good number of shirts, which are currently on sale on the website, in the stores in London and Manchester, I think, at the moment as well. We've worked with a few mystery boxes in the past as well. That's where a large order of that initial 5,000. So yeah, the kind of like the core business of this is that kind of like designing, manufacturing, and selling of football shirts. And again, what makes us different is that we're now doing this independently. So we don't work with a Nike or Adidas or Umbro. I have a manufacturer in China and go straight to a manufacturer in China to do it, just because that keeps the costs as low as possible and kind of gives us not only that kind of creative control, but the kind of like business control to really drive this project forward.
That's fantastic. And just kind of leaping back to what you said initially, about the sort of start of Portobello, was you want to do things differently. What differentiates you to other clubs? So is this kind of your part of your bigger visions then, is to make it into, not just football club, it's, Portobello FC as a brand, as an entity from that side as well then?
Yeah, so definitely over the last, when you start something, the possibilities are endless. Like it could be whatever you want it to be. But then over time, you kind of have to kind of like refine what it is you're working on, reduce perhaps certain expectations, have a different approach. So for example, in season 1, we had 5 different football shirts designed, like in terms of home, away, goalkeeper home, goalkeeper away. And then we did a third shirt. That was, looking back, probably too many different types of shirts. For season 2, we had 3 different types of shirts. So one design for the home, one design for the away, and one design for the goalkeeper kit. Whereas this season 3, we basically worked on one design, but did it in different color schemes. And that kind of efficiency, because I think this year's designs, in my opinion, are the best. And just having that in 3 different colors, rather than trying to come up with 3 different designs and perhaps saturate our own idea, that's been a kind of big step forward for us.
Okay, do you know what? I've been staring at them on my second screen for 15 minutes now, and I've only just noticed that they're the same style with different color schemes.
Yeah.
So they genuinely do look so different that you don't notice it until someone sort of says it. Who designed it? Was that yourself?
So for the current season's design was just a person I found on Instagram who's in like Argentina.
Okay, very global.
Yeah, it was literally just that. I saw a design on Instagram that I liked. It's not the color scheme you're currently seeing, but it's essentially the same pattern. So I messaged them and asked them, could we turn your design into a real football shirt? And he was happy with that. We paid him, obviously. And then shared it with Classic Football Shirts, and they agreed to take on a number of shirts as part of that kind of sponsorship. So yeah, that's what I'm currently working on for next season as well, is finalizing next year's designs. And again, it's the same kind of like idea of having one design in multiple color schemes. Just because I think for us as a business, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I suppose if that's your kind of main part of it, I guess you want to keep the cost as low as possible. But what's the sort of goals for Portobello FC on the pitch then over the next kind of 3 to 5 years, and potentially longer term? Are you still sort of focused on that as well as the brand side of things? To obviously elevate both, I suppose. But what's the sort of ideas for you from that side?
So when I initially started, the idea was promotion, get as high as possible into the non-league pyramid. But then when you actually run something for 3 years, you realise the challenges that you'd face doing so. So for myself, I kind of have like I'm happy with where we are, kind of like a small amateur grassroots football club, kind of like just beneath non-league. So non-league would essentially start at a division above where we currently are. But that division is probably just beyond not just financial means, but just resources. You're talking about an additional 12 games in a season, having to pay not just for the referee, but you have to pay for 2 assistant referees. There's so much more that's required of you to be competitive at that level. It's probably just too big of a step forward. So for me, it's, this is the kind of ceiling. This is who we are. We're a small grassroots amateur club, and that's okay. I think if we can be successful and win a title and win a cup along that journey every other season or so, that's great. And I think as well, people, enjoying playing football and making friends, that has value in itself as well. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked when it comes to kind of sport as well. It's not just, how high you can finish. It's kind of like the relationships you form along the way as well. So that's kind of like my vision for the club. It's kind of like not about growth on the pitch. It's about going into every season, being well prepared, being competitive, and hopefully at the end of it, you have something to celebrate. But sometimes you don't. Like our season now we're kind of like slightly bottom half of the table following promotion last year. We're not going to win anything this year, but that's football.
But following a promotion, you can't really say anything. If you stay up in that division, for this season, then surely that's a success in itself. It's probably worth more than winning the league, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Obviously, you want to win the league, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, the previous league, it's great on that, but not having to get relegated to then go win that league again, subsequent years and things like that, I suppose is definitely a win. So that's clearly my Arsenal fan of top four's a trophy kind of mentality coming in there. As long as you stay in the league, it's fine.
Yeah, I think that's really the big difference between the professional element of the game and the kind of the amateur. There's more to a season than what you'd see in terms of points on the table. It's kind of like, are people committed? Is the enthusiasm there? It's because it's not sometimes. Some people don't turn up to training because it's cold. That's the reality of like grassroots amateur football.
Hungover from the Friday night.
Yeah, you kind of have to just deal with everything and accept it for what it is. It's not perfect, but it is interesting. Again, I support Arsenal, but I don't really watch much Arsenal now because I'm so involved in this. And I much prefer going to, watch the team, that I helped build on a Saturday afternoon, and then watch, multimillionaires play football. If I'm being very honest, I still obviously follow the results in the games, but it's not for me a priority anymore.
No, and do you know what? I think you're not alone in that. Obviously, you're in a very unique position, obviously, owning and running a football club, of course, but that sort of grassroots level, I know categorically, or you're not on your own, and so many more people are doing that. Because, Arsenal, for example, cheapest tickets, what, £60-70 a game? You can't afford that. Whereas you can go and see Portobello FC on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Was it free or a couple of quid on the gates or something?
I won't even charge you.
There we go. It's and to be able to sort of get involved with that, and you do see some dodgy calls from refs, and you do see some dodgy tackles that is borderline assault at some games.
Yeah.
But that's the love of the game. I think that's the beauty of grassroots as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, of course.
So talking about actual running a club then on a day-to-day. So obviously you said you don't even get time to watch Arsenal a lot of the time, obviously the love of it as well as time. In kind of an average, what's your sort of week looking like at an average week in terms of your sort of day-to-day responsibilities of running the club? Do you get involved with like the player side, or is that probably down to your manager to deal with all of that? I suppose you might have some interactions. Tell us what it's all about.
So in terms of day-to-day across the season, mine is more administrative and financial in terms of making sure we've got all the registrations done so players are eligible to play. There's a lot more involved in that, including like international clearance, where, for players born overseas, you need to get permission from the FA for that player to play for your club. And if you don't have that permission, or you don't even have evidence that they've had it previously, that could be a 3-4 week wait for that player to be eligible to play. So there's a whole element, that kind of admin side that people don't even realize of kind of like grassroots football. That's not every grassroots football league. I think that might just be specific to where the league we compete in.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, because we play Saturdays and technically part of the English football pyramid as opposed to Sundays, maybe they're a bit more on top of it than perhaps people who play Sunday football. But yeah, I mean, I mainly leave to coaches to do what they do, which is coach. Again, I'm not a coach. I don't claim to be a coach. I do have opinions, of course, and sometimes you just have to, withhold your opinions because you brought people on board so they can do the coaching. You kind of have to have faith in what they're doing, and ultimately that's kind of like worked over the last 2-3 years as well. First season was a struggle. Second season we won our division. Played 16
Brilliant.
games, won 13, 2 draws and only 1 defeat. In 16 games, we only conceded 13 goals. And that wasn't just the best defensive record in our division. It was the best defensive record in like our county football league system. So that's something I'm quite proud of. Not just the fact that we won, we were just so hard to beat.
Yeah, that's an incredible record there. Wow. Lost only 1 game. What was the score in that 1 game that you lost? Do you remember?
No, I can't. It might have been like a 3-1 or 2-1 loss. It wasn't something of note, to be honest.
Yeah.
And winning that kind of like title. If anyone wants to go back on the Instagram to see the goal that won us the title, it's quite a good video. We were basically going up against our rival, and all we needed was a draw. And it was quite a tense game, and we scored in like the 85th, 86th minute, 1-0. So the 3 points would have won us the league. But then a minute later, we conceded the goal for 1-1. So we're still on to win it. But it was like the stressful final 2-3 minutes of my life. Because, had they scored, we had another game. But, that 1-1 was enough to win us the division. Yeah, that's probably, when I think back at everything that I've done in my life, that moment there of like, I've worked on this for 3 years. Everyone else has worked on it. Everyone else who's, stayed with the project and kind of like saw it through when a lot of people walked away, to win your first trophy as a club. That was quite special.
No, I can imagine. Did you do like the pitch celebrations, get involved with the players and things like the owners do? You get involved, like throwing them in the air, stuff like that.
I'm always behind the camera. I've got to be behind the camera because it's you want to capture those moments so that people can look back on them. Yeah, that for me was just have a look back if you go on my Instagram. I think it would have been like end of March, April last year for that video where we win the league, because it is a really good moment for us.
That sounds great. Yeah, guys, if you are listening or watching, just make sure you check out the description. The links are all there, so make sure you do have a look as well. I will be looking after for sure. You'll probably see loads of Football Drop podcast likes, about 100 posts at the end of tonight. So get a little bit of extra support. Okay, so you've won 13 games, drew 2, lost 1, got promoted. What was the feeling at the end of that season in terms of the conversations with your manager, set the expectations for obviously the season now that we're in? How does that all happen? And then kind of setting your target, thinking, okay, we're in a new league now. So you've got to get, no disrespect to the current players, but potentially better quality players of, a few additions like every club have. Do you need to increase budgets and things like that? How does that affect you?
I mean, at an amateur level, you're really at the discretion of players at an amateur level. For some players, they moved on. Just for like, it's no longer something they want to be participating in, just for like personal reasons. It's a massive commitment to do that every Saturday and to train during the week. Some players, trying to get as many people involved as possible. It's not easy, to get new players involved. Again, it's that element of we're trusting someone we don't know. Again, we've had people kind of like burn us this season, come on board, not pay, get red cards, start a fight, get the game abandoned, cost the club money.
Really?
So it's not. There's no magic formula with an amateur team. It is very much you just have to be as proactive as possible, really put in as much work as possible, and then just on the probability, you attract some good people to your team. There's it's not the professional game where you can say, oh, we've got this about money, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's kind of like you just work hard and connect with the right people who share your values.
No, absolutely. No, I can't believe. Yeah, it's just like the red cards and things. It hits home so much because it is just totally different. And I suppose you forget that clubs got to pay fines for these, and when £50 or £100 for a red card or fine or whatever it is, at grassroots it makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I used to work for the County Football Association, so I have an idea of like that back end. My personal opinion is that they take too much money. The FA takes too much money from grassroots football clubs.
Do they get a cut of it? Do they?
They get all of it. Yeah, the county.
Oh, so it doesn't go to the county.
No.
Sorry, so
no one knows.
Yeah, how does that work?
No one knows where it's going to go. They wouldn't tell you. But you get a yellow card is about £12 fine. That for me is excessive because in football, someone's going to make a tackle, and it could just be a bad tackle. It's nothing malicious, but potentially asking that player to pay £10, £12 out of their own pocket for what's essentially a mistake. Now, if a player does something stupid and dangerous, yes, they should be punished for it. And in our case, we had a player that ended up getting into a fight with an opposition player. That was a £50 red card. Unfortunately, he was a new player, so we didn't have that kind of I guess there wasn't that buy-in from him, and he just walked away. And then because, the referee abandoned the game on the 93rd minute, so there was a misconduct charge against the club. Yeah. We didn't even know he abandoned the game. We were completely unaware that the game was abandoned. We just assumed it had ended because it was the 93rd minute. So there was another £150 fine for the club. Again, that was our first, in 3 years, that was our first misconduct charge. £150 for your first kind of offence for me was excessive. And that kind of puts a lot of pressure on grassroots football clubs. I'm quite fortunate in the sense that I have a bigger vision at hand and, perhaps a bit better cash flow than most other clubs. But that's the kind of amount of money that could just, for someone who's just volunteering to run one team, lead to them just giving up on it because 150 plus the 50, that's 200 quid. You've got to think about how many footballs that can buy or a pitch hire. Pitches aren't cheap. So if anyone was running a football club, that's going to be your biggest cost throughout a season as well. So there's quite a lot of expenses, and kind of like the FA's approach, in my opinion, doesn't help.
No, I didn't realise just how much it costs for these things.
Yeah,
and it does make you wonder where, but that's probably a whole different topic we probably won't cover. But where does that money go? Because it's going to cost you an absolute bomb, cost the players a bomb.
Yeah,
so just pay for staff.
I mean, look, football clubs at an amateur level isn't cheap, and I think I've had to have a lot of lessons over the last 3 years about how the money's spent. Again, I've been quite fortunate that I've had the cash flow to kind of spend it a bit more freely. But even for myself, I'm looking forward now going, we have to make cuts in certain areas just because it's not sustainable. So just to give you a bit of background where we play, we spent 1,500 on pitch hire for the season on Saturdays. But we only have 10 home games. So that's £150 for every time we play a home game just to hire the pitch. And the pitch is nothing special. We're playing on it Saturday. It was muddy as hell. Then you got to add, the referee fee onto that as well. That's £50. Now, in my opinion, referees, they do a good job for the most part, and I think they do take a lot of stick from players. So I can't complain about paying £50 for a referee. But when you add that to, the 150, it's £200 a game. That is quite a high expense. And then when you perhaps have, referees who are quite friendly, like giving out cards a bit unnecessarily, you're talking about, it can be quite an expensive activity for people, which is, it's not great because, again, we talk about like grassroots football. It's the working person's game. It's the average person who just wants to have a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just tell us a little bit about the sort of ground you play at then. You said it's a field. It's, completely muddy as hell. Is there like a little clubhouse? Is there like a little mobile or something that you go to for like changing rooms and stuff?
Yeah.
Are there any seats around the pitch or anything?
No, nothing like that. We play in a place in Greenford in West London. we've kind of been there for it's quite a central location relative in London. It's on the central line. It has changing room facilities. We have like a Green King that's not too far away, so we go there after games. But yeah, it's nothing, it's nothing out, it's nothing special. But it's been a good home for 3 years, but we probably won't be there next year just because of the cost. It's too high for the quality of the pitch, especially when you get to January, February onwards, and it's starting to rain.
Yeah.
It doesn't become value for money at £150 when it's just muddy.
So what are you sort of looking at for the sort of next season for your sort of base as such? Is it more like a 3G pitch style? So it's like all weather conditions, or no? I feel like I just sworn at you.
If £150 was too expensive for grass, 3G is bordering on impossible to find in London, because at the end of the day, everyone has to kick off. Everyone has to kick off at the same time, and most 3G pitches are already booked. So we'll probably go further out of field to a place we played previously. That's probably that is significantly less in terms of cost. So there's slight inconvenience on travel, but at the end of the day, it's the reality of being involved in football. If you want to play, you do have to travel, an element of it. But again, London's fairly easy to get around. I think Londoners shouldn't complain when it comes to travel, because it is, for the most part, quite convenient.
No, absolutely. So obviously I appreciate that you're sort of quite happy at the level the club is at now. Do you have any dreams of, one day having your own ground or something like that at all? Or, doing a ground share with another club or something, so, you kind of go 50-50 on a ground, and, it's Portobello FC and, whoever your sort of main rivals are, for example. Is that a pipe dream, or is that something you'd love to work towards in the future?
It's definitely a dream that I'm working towards, but it's more of a long-term dream. The reality in London, you're limited on space, number one.
Yeah.
Anything that's available for football or sports is probably already been occupied. So my kind of hope is perhaps partnering with maybe like a school that has space, and perhaps developing it, working with a school, and then perhaps having a stand, like, so people could come and watch.
Yeah.
But again, that's the kind of like long-term dream, really. But having our own ground in West London is basically impossible, and that's again, this is the reality of like the situation. You kind of accept it for what it is. But maybe there's a future in which we're working with a local school that has the space, has the facility, and we could perhaps help develop it and perhaps cultivate quite a unique match day experience that people can come and watch. That's the dream.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, sounds absolutely brilliant. I think in terms of, as a club, as you said, we said it a couple of times, doing things differently. Partnering with the school just sounds completely unique, but it makes, in my head at least, that makes total sense. If they've got land, they've got space that you can use, change a little bit of access, and then you're sort of laughing, really. If you get a stand as well, a couple of hundred people in there, again, and then all of a sudden...
it's kind of like long term. You have to have that kind of like history behind you to kind of like bring people on board. So, some people see a vision, other people want to see what you've done previously. But yeah, that's kind of like long term. My kind of like focus, kind of like moving forward over next season, is really focusing on the business side and being quite robust in terms of what we're doing. So again, when I started the football club, the whole idea was to try and build it as kind of like the most fashionable football club in the UK. But that is quite subjective. Fashion is very much a matter of opinion. And it kind of like, if you look at the kind of football shirt kind of like segment, it's become very saturated with everyone pumping out kits pretty much every other month, whether it's training kits or kind of like pre-warm-up, pre-match kits or anything like that. It's kind of like, it's so saturated at the moment. My kind of focus over the last year, and it's kind of like what we're focused on moving forward, is kind of having our niche as being the most affordable football club in the world. So the average football shirt brand new is about £50-60. My kind of plan for next season is to sell online at £20, and then have a market store on Portobello Road and sell our jerseys in person for £15. So kind of like creating an entirely different section of the football shirt business, because it's that aspect of it doesn't exist at the moment. Even with small clubs, most small clubs will charge £40 for a brand new football shirt. So we're trying to go to the complete other end and create something really different. I think that'll work at the end of the day, because I think the quality of our product is good. It's not the same level as like a Adidas or Nike jersey that would be made for like a Real Madrid or Barcelona or Arsenal or United.
Yeah.
But for £15-20, it's a good football shirt. So it's kind of like,
absolutely,
that's the kind of focus for the next kind of 6 months is finalizing the designs, getting kind of like an initial amount made, kind of like testing the market stall idea, which is something that I wanted to do for the last 3 years but haven't got around to it yet.
Okay.
And then just kind of like promoting ourselves as the the most affordable football club in the world. And I think as well, we've sold, I know we've had customers from all over the world before, from the US, from across Europe, across Asia as well. So I think for us, it's like the brand is there, the products have already been made, good relationships with manufacturer in China, really unique kind of like concept in terms of affordability. So I think everything is there. It's just about just seeing it through at the moment.
That sounds amazing. I do have to ask though, when are you going to get the time to be on a market stall, or are you going to get someone to run that? Because you don't have enough hours in the day unless you're going to pause time to get the rest of this done.
Yeah, I mean, and I've had this conversation with other people already. It's like, so I go to pretty much every game on Saturdays. For me, it's a matter of prioritization. If setting up a market store on a Saturday is a priority, I kind of have to not go to the games. I kind of have to sacrifice that aspect of it next season just to build the business. But that is the reality of it. Maybe I can get someone to help on the social media side and they can go to the games instead, and try and capture the content. So we'll probably explore that. But actually running the market store has always been central to kind of like the football club, because the market is kind of like key to kind of like the Portobello Road area. And obviously it's Portobello Football Club representing Portobello Road. When you have that kind of like high footfall tourists and a really affordable product that's unique, no one else is going to be selling this. And if we can achieve that kind of at £15 price point, we should sell quite a lot on the market. So that for me is the priority for next year, is really just focusing on the business.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Yeah, sounds like a really exciting future for Portobello FC. Just a final kind of thing from me, I guess, before we sort of wrap up. What advice would you give someone who, the average fan and the average football person, probably myself, that wants to start a football club? What would be your advice? And not what you said off air. What would be the advice that you would actually say?
I think establish the reasons as to why you want to do it. I think liking football is probably not a good enough reason to do it. I think you have to have a very solid idea of what the end goal is. Doesn't mean it has to be fully developed, but you have to have something. So again, for myself, it was, I want to start a football club and it's going to be successful because I'm going to design and manufacture and sell the jerseys, and they're going to be great jerseys. And then we can use some of that money to reinvest into the team to make it sustainable. So that was a clear business idea I had at the beginning. Combining that with a very strong identity and brand that was already well known and established, it's kind of a win-win situation for myself. So that would be my advice to anyone wanting to start a football club. First of all, is why. It doesn't need to be a profit-driven reason, but it needs to be a very good reason. And you need to have a very good identity and a sense of self in terms of like, who are you as a football club? Because if you're just insert name a town United, and you're wearing red, what's the point? What would be the point?
Yeah.
It wouldn't serve any purpose. So that would be my advice for anyone wanting to start a football club. Just do something different and have a good reason as to why you're doing it.
Perfect. Well, there you go, guys. I hope you've really enjoyed that episode. Callum, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. As we said, check out the website. All the links are there. Check out their Instagram. Make sure you buy one of the caps or one of the shirts. They do look absolutely beautiful. They are a work of art.
Check on, if anyone wants a shirt, probably best to check on Classic Football Shirts website, because they might be discounted at the moment. So
even better.
Last time I checked, I think they were 25% off on Classic Football Shirts. So that discount might still be there.
There we go. You heard it from the man himself. But no, Callum, thank you very much again. Guys, hope you've enjoyed that, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me on.